So I'm looking at what Elon Musk said, that free speech is essential to a functioning democracy, and he is absolutely right. I mean, if you have a place where people aren't allowed to speak what's on their mind, if they are being suppressed for whatever reason from speaking out and expressing their political views, then that's not a democracy. That's an authoritarian system. Whether you have the church suppressing people from expressing a certain idea, or if you have corporations working hand in hand to fire and ostracize people who are sharing a specific idea, or you have like a gang, a mob of people with pitchforks coming to your house because you had wrong political opinions, yeah, that's not really a free society if it happens often, if it's systemic. And I think in the US it's kind of systemic. The only reason that people have freedom in the US is because of their forefathers. It's because the forefathers actually fought for the concept of liberty. Nowadays, if the people who are running the culture right now, like the people from Trust and Safety at the social media companies, if the intelligentsia from academia, if prominent journalists, if they were to create their own country, it would be an authoritarian shithole. Because they do not value liberty. They value equity, which doesn't go hand in hand with liberty. Like freedom doesn't create equality and equity. But these people do not believe in freedom and liberty anymore. They believe in safety. So they want someone in power, like a zookeeper, that keeps people locked up and safe. You know, the lion in the zoo, he gets free healthcare, free food. He's allowed to roam around the cage. He's allowed some freedom, but like he can't do whatever he wants. And that is the progressive society that a lot of people are cheering on. And my favorite part is like, oh, well, it's a private company, so it can do whatever it wants. I notice a lot of progressives who say that, but then when they get banned or their friends get banned, all of a sudden they don't believe that anymore. Funny how that works. You know, you have like these strategic anarcho-capitalists. They believe that just because... they believe that you as a human being, you can't do anything you want, right? Like you have laws, you have rules that you need to follow. But if you start a company, all of a sudden you can do whatever you want as long as you're a private company. And as long as you don't go against them. Like if you start hurting them, then oh, well, what is going on? I mean, there's so many examples of prominent left-leaning people that got banned from Twitter, and all of a sudden they were saying, oh, well, you know, Twitter is a private company, can do whatever it wants. That doesn't happen. You know what else is funny? Like, there have been governments which banned Twitter. And the US president stepped in. It's like, oh, but the free speech. It's like, oh, you're against liberty. So in other words, Twitter is allowed to ban citizens. I believe in Uganda, it was the controversy. Like, they're allowed to ban Ugandan citizens. But the moment the Ugandan government bans Twitter, oh, now there's no free speech. I mean, literally last week, we had an article from Cornell University with the blessings of the mainstream media where they talk about the study on how people on YouTube need to be demonetized further, even if they're following all the rules. It's still a problem. And they consider YouTube to be a gatekeeper. So when they're in their small circle, talking with their fellow academics and their studies, all of a sudden they refer to YouTube as a gatekeeper. But when they're in public on Twitter, where everyone gets to see them, oh no, it's my private company, can do whatever it wants. How long are people going to believe this bullshit though? Like how long until people start doing something about it? Because I'll tell you a little bit of history, which the left is very aware of, by the way, but they choose to ignore it. Like after you have the first factories being built, after the Industrial Revolution, you have massive factories which required a huge number of workers. So they attracted the peasantry to these factories. And these factories had barracks where the workers would get to sleep. So the farmers would give up their lifestyle from the rural area and they would move to cities. And they would move to these barracks and they would realize as they keep working that the contract they initially negotiated is getting worse and worse for them to the point where they're becoming slaves. The work hours would become longer. The safety at the work would become non-existent. The pay would become smaller as the factory owner would start docking their pay. Well, you use the barrack, you use our tools, you use our food, so instead of paying you 100% what we negotiated, well, we're paying you 100%, but we're taking 75% away for all of these commodities that you're using. So obviously a lot of workers decided to go on strike. Now, what's funny about it is that they were on company's property. So the factory owner would come out with his thugs, usually members of the mafia or, but private security anyway. And they would say, you have three choices. You can get back to work, you can go home, or we can shoot you. And that was legal. Why was it legal? Because they were on company property. They were trespassing. Right? So according to the law, the factory owner was in the right. Now, would these leftists that are today defending social media every single time with my private company can do whatever it wants, would they be back then saying, hey, my factory owner can do whatever it wants? It's my private factory. Why are you complaining? Hey, if the people don't like it, they can work somewhere else, right? They can just uproot their entire lifestyle and energy that they invested in building all these towns that were around factories, and they can just leave. And what's even more interesting, like imagine if the factories, like for example, the ones producing paper, would have had the technology and the ability to communicate with one another and to decide, oh, so this leftist newspaper that's rallying the worker against us, let's stop supplying it paper. I mean, let's deplatform it. We don't have to sell to bigots. We don't have to sell to revolutionaries. Let's stop supplying them with ink and paper so that they can't publish what they want to say. Do you think like you would have the same leftists today go, well, like my private company can do whatever it wants? Of course not, right? What ended up happening were rules and legislation regulating what the factories can and can't do, the 8-hour workday, Saturday and Sunday off, like a lot of things. And that's how we evolved. So I definitely do not believe this bullshit. My private company can do whatever it wants. I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. I never was. In fact, recently I witnessed how a house is being built and the huge amount of regulation that talks about how you can isolate your house and how thick the brick needs to be, and like an entire thing of rules, regulation, and licenses just to build a house. No one said, oh, well, my private builder can do whatever. Like, that's absolute nonsense, and they know it. Like, anyone that uses this argument is being disingenuous. And secondly, the company is also evil. I mean, the way Twitter started, literally, the way Twitter started, it was a platform that allowed you to speak truth to power. That was how Jack Dorsey coined it. So a lot of people moved to Twitter based on that promise, invested their human energy into it, and once they got hooked on it, right, because once you have the sunken cost fallacy, then they started trying to manipulate people by manipulating the algorithm, shadow banning, outright banning mainstream media outlets for publishing true news. And up till this day, they haven't apologized. No one is being held accountable for it. I mean, it's so obvious that they're working hand in hand with the government. And why would I trust this company to decide how to sway public opinion? So when I see someone like Elon Musk say about this, yeah, sure, give it a shot. Now, people are wondering, is Elon Musk going to create a new Twitter? I hope not. I hope not. And I'll tell you why not. Like, the reason that people don't go on an alternative platform has nothing to do with the UI or the quality of another platform. Like, Twitter is very easy to emulate. Like, even if, out of all the social medias, I mean, Twitter is the easiest to emulate. Like, even if you were to make an identical platform with Twitter, people wouldn't join because people want to be where the majority of people are. So, I really don't think that making another alternative to Twitter would be the correct solution in the case of Elon Musk. In the case of Elon Musk, with the money that he is having, there is a thing called investor activists. So the investor activist buys the stocks from a company with the purpose of doing activism, not with the purpose of making a profit. So there have been like environmental activists that have purchased stocks from oil companies in order to make them to follow more green regulations. Right? So he would have the opportunity of actually purchasing Twitter stocks so that he can have a say in the company. Will he actually manage to change something? I have no idea. I have a feeling that if you were to have someone like Elon Musk who would make Twitter an actual free speech platform, you would have government regulations all of a sudden coming in on Twitter. And they would force you to censor, and they would be like, oh, well, don't you want that protection from lawsuits? Like, don't you like the fact that you got immunity when someone posts on your platform and you're not responsible for what they post? You want to keep that immunity? Oh, well, you need to start censoring hate speech. They can't do that. The government can come in and all of a sudden realize, oh, well, Twitter is a little bit of too monopolistic for our taste. Let's break it apart. I got a feeling that's one of the things that can happen. And the other thing that can happen, you can have like the people within Twitter all of a sudden doing walkouts, resigning, trying to sabotage your business. We saw that with Netflix, with Dave Chappelle. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Elon Musk is going to do. Both choices are going to be very difficult to implement, but at least something would be done. So I would love to see it. And let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. And by the way, do check This Week in Stupid, which is coming up. It's going to be a great episode, and I'll see you guys there.